Hello everyone, it's Jonny Khatru, and today we're going to be listening to the new Mono album, Pilgrimage of the Soul. There's something a bit rugged about this that I really like, you know, something kind of dark, something a bit rough. So yeah, that's the album that you could say made me a fan, although it's more like I loved the album, so I wanted to hear more from them, but I wouldn't say they ever hit a peak like that for me again. But just not that long ago, 2 years ago, they put out a new album. And out of interest, I checked out the single. It was called After You Comes the Flood. And I liked it quite a bit, and I did end up enjoying the album. Not like it was a masterpiece or anything, but I really liked it. So let's give that one a listen now before we get into the new album. I love this. Pretty overwhelming. So next we're going to get into the new album. Track 1 is Riptide. It was the first single, and it's really good. I like it quite a bit. Very memorable, quite intense, so get ready. Like a modern machine gun by Jimi Hendrix. So yeah, the song definitely feels like a sort of blast from the past for Mono, much like some of their previous album did. Something slightly awe-inspiring at points. You know, the album cover is obviously very spacey. They seem to be aiming for that kind of sound. But I don't know, when I saw that album cover for this, the faces in space kind of image, it did kind of look to me like it could mean bad news. It could mean something more, well, twinkly, as we've been saying. But it's exciting. I just hope the rest of the album has a bit more to offer so that it doesn't get dull, because it's a pretty long album, this. All right, let's get into the second track then. It's called Imperfect Things. It's pretty nice. I do like it texturally. Nice. That is an unexpected change. I'm not sure about those strings in the background. Yeah, I didn't have a problem with any of the sounds on this, but it was melodically what the strings were doing that wasn't really doing it for me. Struck me as a little bit generic, and it kind of spoiled the main chords and melody that were, like I said, were starting to work for me. And then when those strings came in, I just felt a bit like, maybe not. But yeah, that was an interesting song. I did like the sequence it went through, the way it started ambient for a good couple of minutes, and then went into something a bit more exciting, and then got a little bit noisy towards the end. But yeah, schmaltzy indeed with the strings, the string parts, I should say. Yeah, they fumbled the landing, I think would be a decent way to say that. All right, let's move on to track 3. It's called Heaven in a Wildflower. This is a bit dangerous sounding, isn't it? Sounding a bit tack. It's nothing we haven't heard before, you know. 𝐒𝐻𝐳 Ross have done this too many times. That was definitely the weakest song so far, and I can only hope that the rest of the album is not too much like that. Just very simple, very repetitive. The main thing changing was the subtle changes in texture as more instruments came in and then went out towards the end. Which, you know, it was effective to a point. I still think the first song, which was the lead single, is really good. And the second track was alright, was pretty good. It's only really that song so far that I haven't enjoyed. Alright, let's move on to track 4. It's called To See a World. Just a short one, this. At least there's more going on than in the last song. Yeah, that song had some decent moments. I enjoyed some of the intensity in the playing of the lead guitar, but it definitely broke some rules, that song. General lack of inspiration in the composition. And yeah, I was not a fan of the rhythm. You know, just the ga, 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 ga. Not very inspiring, to say the least. But still, I guess at least it was quick and to the point, and it definitely felt like something was happening after the barren landscape of track 3. It was okay. It was okay. All right, next song was the second single. I only heard it once along with the music video, and I can say I did not enjoy it as much as the first track. I know that for sure. Definitely was not as intense. Let's see how it works in context of the album. It's called Innocence. The keyboards with the splashing cymbals. It reminds me of 𝐒𝐿. Yeah, something slightly magical in that sound for me. I kind of like this song so far, but I would like something else to happen. I have pretty mixed feelings about that song. When I first heard it, I was pretty disappointed compared to the first single. You know, it definitely lacks the oomph that the first single had. I liked some of the changes it went through. I liked the structure. I would generally say I enjoyed it, but I wouldn't say I'm impressed by it. You know, I'm just like, it's fine. All right, on to track 6. It's called the 𝐒𝐚𝐳. The 𝐒𝐚𝐳. Bass sounds good in this one. Distorted bass. Yeah, there's some tension to it, isn't there? All right. I do think that was one of the better songs. There was a tension in it that was pretty effective. In the actual composition, you know, there was this tension in lack of resolve, which sounded really nice. I do wish that it had a bit more of a payoff, perhaps. There were a few points where I was anticipating a payoff of some kind. And they built the intensity to a really high level a couple of times, which was great. But even then, it felt like the intensity itself was building to some kind of payoff. But there's something to be said for maintaining tension. It held my interest in that way, which is cool. All right, the next song is actually the longest on the album, and fittingly it also has the longest title. It's called Hold Infinity in the Palm of Your Hand. Ah, that's interesting, that panning sample. Something slightly creepy about it. That was a nice change. Oh man, this is getting pretty good. The guitars are sounding nice. Yeah, that was pretty compelling. The song took its sweet time. The first half was near unbearable to me, thanks to the choice of sounds and the extreme simplicity. And even some of the notes they were introducing were sounding pretty good. There was a feeling of yearning in it, a feeling of desperation that I'm always looking for in this kind of music that oh so seldom appears. But yeah, they delivered. They did deliver it there. That sounded great. Definitely a song of two halves, though. I definitely started out pretty unhappy with it. And by the end, I was like, oh, this is actually one of the highlights of the album. Yeah, it arrived to a nice place, but I could have done with it getting there much, much quicker. All right, then. It's time for the last song, track 8. And it's called And Eternity in an Hour. Why do I get the feeling this is all we're getting for the last track on the album? I don't mind those notes on the strings. Something a bit Max Richter in them once again. I quite liked the main piano motif in that song. I didn't always like what the strings did along with it. They kind of made it feel more simple than it needed to. Sometimes when it left it alone, just the piano part on its own, that was like the best part because it sounded so free. But yeah, the strings were hit or miss. They sounded nice enough. But yeah, overall, it wasn't a very exciting piece. Just quite pretty. Probably didn't deserve to be over 6 minutes long. Yeah, that last song was pretty. And it had nice instrument sounds. You know, the production was nice. Melodically, it was okay. All right, some thoughts on Pilgrimage of the Soul. It was often a very pretty album, but it definitely fell into the trap of cliche. Far too often, actually, and I would say more often than Mono's last album, unfortunately. It felt to me on their last album, Nowhere Now Here, that they were in the right direction, pushing the emotion, pushing the intensity a bit more often. There were a couple songs, as I recall, on the last album that were a little bit twee, but I think on this album they let that take over a bit too much. And it ended up feeling, unfortunately, like they were a bit uninspired. Like they didn't have the ideas to create a whole album and have it satisfying. And unfortunately, they opted to create an extremely long album with only a couple of good ideas, it felt to me. You know, as I said before starting even, I really enjoyed the first single, Riptide, the first track on the album. Really strong, really exciting, great riff. Although, as we've discussed, it was a bit too indebted to their earlier stuff, perhaps. But I did enjoy its machine gun rhythm. It's probably the most memorable thing on the album. I remember some of the textures in Imperfect Things being nice and interesting, and it had a pretty cool change halfway through. And the Auguries was another standout. It was, you know, reasonably exciting. Of course, I think a moment of the album probably has to go to the ending of Hold Infinity in the Palm of Your Hand, which took things to a level of intensity that they had been threatening to take a couple times, but never actually did. They finally went there on that song. So yeah, I would have to say that this album is somewhat disappointing from Mono. That they had a lot more potential than this at this point in their career. And instead, I feel they fell back on a lot of cliches and just covered a lot of ground that they've already covered before, not to mention plenty of other artists and bands I've already covered before. The overall feeling I'm left with is just that they relied on too many stale ideas. Some real highlights, a great opening track, but overall, definitely far from their best work, unfortunately. But I wonder what Mono are going to do next. Because I know that between making their last album and this new one, they did a couple of releases covering earlier material of them, like doing new live versions, live in the studio versions of old songs. So in that way, it makes sense that their newer material is returning more to the style of their older material. But on one hand, that's resulting in them bringing back some of the intensity, which we like. But on the other hand, it just emphasizes that feeling that they don't really have anything new to offer, which is a shame. But whatever they do next, I'll listen to it in the hope that they figure out something new. But I do feel that if they continue down this road, it's not going to result in good material. They need to change things up in some way, I think. So if you've enjoyed this video, come and join us over on Twitch at twitch.tv/JonnyKhatru, where this live stream was recorded. I'd love to see you there for some live streams of full albums, and we also listen to singles and music videos. Follow me on Twitter if you want to keep up with updates on when I'll go live and when I've got new videos coming. And if you enjoyed this video, you can support me using the link in the description to buy me a coffee. I'll really appreciate it. It helps me to keep this channel going, keep making these videos. And thank you very much for watching. Until next time, take it easy.